Thanks, Michelle. I just want to let everybody know that we're sort of we've got a veil of sadness that's entered the speakers today with the sad passing of Uncle Jack Charles, well-renowned man of song, man of story, part of this stolen generation. He sadly passed away. So we operating with that level of sadness. So, but I want to make and to pay special recognition to Uncle Jack and have a moment of silence in his memory. And for those who don't know him, please Google him, and once you see his face, you'll know exactly who he is. And it's really created an impact on all of us. And unfortunately, brother here, Tyson, has only just found out. We just need him to take a moment as well of reflection, because people have personal relationships with Uncle Jack. So if we can take that moment of silence, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your consideration. Uncle Jack was not only a beautiful elder, but he was an actor, a musician, a potter, an activist, a mentor. He was just a beautiful household name generally. And you'll hear his voice resonate through stories and narratives and stuff. He was just wonderful. And I think and I want to pay my respects to that, and I'll let others from our group also pay their respects as they see fit when they're ready. But first and foremost, I want to give recognition to the country who we're on, in terms of I'm on Turrbal country here in Brisbane, the Turrbal Yagara people, and I want to pay my respects to them elders, past and present and future. And young ones emerging that are going to be our leaders into the future, and around us as peoples, and us as a culture, and a very, very strong, profound culture. We've been led down the weakness of 230 years of colonization, but we are fighting back as a part of that process. So, and tonight, I really want to take that time in terms of what Uncle Jack meant also to this conversation. Storyline, strong sort of sustainability, regenerative, about culture. Even though he was stolen at 4 months and taken away from his mother, he built back his culture. He built back his recognition of who he was and defined who he was based on his own journey. And so I really want to make sure that people understand that journey is an incredible one. It was littered with a lot of troubles and anxiety and sadness, but he prevailed through that to give us the leadership and the humble relationship and the humble man that he was. So thank you again. Michelle, where do we want to go with have a conversation?
Yeah, look, and thanks for including me. I was happy to turn myself off, so to speak, but Tyson and Ross and Mary insisted we join. Regenerative Songlines started up last year as a network of people interested in regeneration, and a strong leadership from a steering group of remarkable Indigenous thinkers and doers. And tonight's yarn is really to be about what is sustainability, what is regenerative and regeneration, where are we going, and how do we do this deeply connected to our country and place in our different roles and responsibilities as Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And one of the reasons I am really honoured to work with Ross and Mary through Future Dreaming, and now with Tyson and Chels and others as part of Regen Songlines, is this incredible openness that the First Peoples have to share with us this remarkable civilizational culture. So the insights from your work and your day-to-day life and the projects that you and your ancestors have been connected to caring for country. And that's why we've got 120 people signed up tonight to have a listen and to share their thoughts later on about what are we doing, all of us together, to build this better future, to face the climate changing world. And how do we do it the proper way? As a non-Indigenous person, my questions are, I love this place deeply and passionately with all my heart and soul. It never feels like what I want to do is enough. Never feels like I could ever know enough or do enough. So how do we, particularly non-Indigenous people, because I can only speak for those of us who are not Indigenous, how can we connect in solidarity and love for country and place, do better, be better, do good things? And yeah, that's enough from me, but that's kind of why this night was set up, hey? And big apologies from Anne Polina and Alana Marsh, both unable to join us. So yeah, but over back to you, Ross, and everyone.
Yeah, and we're gonna ad lib, and Tyson, my brother, jump in when you're ready. But what I wanted to sort of say that I think we lose all touch from the Mother Earth. I mean, we call her a mother, we call her a whole variety of things, but that's the analogy of connection. And when we talk about connection to country, we talk about connection in the purest of forms. We don't talk in language as in land, as in ownership. That's different. That's not us. That's not us, our mob, you know. We don't have the description of dominion. We don't have dominion over our country. We don't have dominion over this land. We don't have dominion over the animals. We do not have dominion over anything. We live in coexistence with Mother Earth. You know, and it's a really apt way of describing our land base. And I think we lose context in terms of we as people, that we don't even understand that the Earth is a living organism, and we're a living organism within inside those living organisms of the planet Earth. We think we're more than the natural planet. And the sooner we wake up to the realization that we are part of Mother Nature, we'll just continue to consume effortlessly and destroy. And we have solutions for that. Because once we understand that we're the ingredients of Earth, and we don't exist without the ingredients of our natural world, and that we are made up of carbon dust, and that we're going to go back to carbon dust one day. And that's the important part. We got to come from somewhere. You know, we might say we come from our ancestors, and that's exactly where we come from. But when you put it in that cultural context, within that cultural lens, we start to understand that. Auntie Mary. So, did you want to have something? You want to add something?
Yes. Mary, you're on mute, love. We were going to ask Mary to talk a bit about the awesomeness of the relationist ethos.
Yeah.
I saw Tyson, you were saying something just there on a chat there. Did you want? I know you don't want to feel. You don't.
No, it's all right.
You're right.
I felt all dippy, and then somebody said they wanted a more nuanced term than non-Indigenous. And
oh, right. I thought you said that.
I just like, wouldn't we all?
Yeah, say, yeah.
You know, we'd like a more nuanced term than Indigenous, and we can do that on our own country, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
say. You called who you are and what you are, and you sort out all those terms. And to be able to have all the right terms means several days of being able to be gathered in a place. And we haven't got that. We've got an hour and a half. And when we write it in a paper, we've got 6,000 words. you know, so that's it. So it's just, yeah, Indigenous, yeah, non-Indigenous. That'll
Yes.
do, you know. And, you know, I'm sorry if that excludes you if you're Indigenous somewhere else and all that kind of thing, but just the people of the land here, and then the people who haven't come in properly yet. And I've got to say that's, you know, we have to carry some of the responsibility for that as well. It's this has been a hard thing for me to come to, but someone's really asserted that for me lately, that we have to bear some of the responsibility for the way the world is right now too, because you know, we have failed to bring settlers in properly under our law and into our country. So that's really hard. I swore at him when he first said that.
I bet.
Take a minute. It was hard, but you know, there's some truth in it. You know, so that's important. And I don't know what I'd like to explore at some stage today would be that we need a new model of allyship. You know what I mean? One that's driven by like our actual history and relations, not a whole heap of shit that's happening out in the world on Twitter. Countries, you know what I mean? We need one that's driven by what's real for us here. Because at the moment I just keep seeing settlers. I can call you settlers if you like, instead of non-Indigenous. Is that better? You like that?
No.
So, but I see, I mean, you know, it's so impossible to get anyone on your team. If you've got a project going on, you need a statistician, and you get old Jeffrey, old mate up the road, you know, to come in, and he's completely ineffective. He's a great statistician, but he's not doing those stats for us because he's spending half his time bloody apologizing for himself and going, oh, well, I wouldn't know because I'm just white and I won't make any decisions because, you know, this has got to be Indigenous led and all that sort of things. And we have Regen Songlines here. There's a steering committee of Indigenous people, but, you know, that's not the leadership, and that can't be the leadership because none of us got the time or the capacity or the place to do that, you know. You know, and then so what is the leadership? I don't know. Is that a whole heap of people just stumbling around in the dark, apologizing for their whiteness and freaking leaving a safe space for something to be Indigenous led and just freaking emerge out of nothing? You know, there needs to be room for some confidence. And I don't know, stop trying to find a name for yourself. It doesn't matter. I don't like my name. You don't like your name. It doesn't matter. That's the name you got. You know, that's the name come from history. And, you know, you want to build something else, and it'll emerge out of something better. And, you know, your great-grandchildren can have a new name. You know, until then, we got to stand uncomfortably in the shit. We got to stand right here in a place where there is no virtuous place to stand. Like, you just let go of ever being virtuous, of ever having a perfectly nice, sweet moral place to stand, because it doesn't exist. Everything's bad, everything's wrong, everyone's culpable. You know, it's, you know, and yeah, I think we need to have a better model. So that's why I sort of started suggesting, you know, it would be better if Michelle wasn't ducking out in the wings every 5 minutes, you know, to center Indigenous voices or anything. And it'd be nice to see her joining in and others joining in as well. So it'd be good to throw it open for a bit of a yarn. Except Auntie Mary's about to speak, so
No, go on.
We might do that in about 40 minutes or so. Hey, Auntie does like a yarn.
I don't know. I don't know where you even start. Because I try to look at things going on in the world though too, and it seems like we're being surrounded by a whole bunch of perfect storms coming. Do you know? Some of them are already here. Of course, climate change, endless wars, some brain dead people in the military-industrial complex think that we can have a short-term nuclear war. You know, they actually think like that. And these are people who run countries. I mean, you can't believe the quality of people who are actually running countries nowadays, you know. So I do believe that if you try to look at just simply the earth, the environment on its own, how can I be a better carer of land? It's not enough. It's not enough. You've got to be not just for peace, because that's a huge loaded question, I reckon, loaded statement about peace. You've got to be properly anti-war, because war is going on all around us. War against other people, in other countries, that is, other cultures too, not only our own here. War against the land, of course, the whole environment. War against women. War against, say, 10-year-old Aboriginal kids who get thrown into jail, you know. War against poor people, you know. So I think you have to be far more, all of us, but especially white fellas. I'm sorry, I'm sounding racist now, I suppose, but you've got to be openly against Australia following meekly behind powerful other hegemonic rulers to go into yet another war. Because all that is saying, well, look, this whole thing about climate change, this whole thing about looking after the environment, you know, it's something that, well, let's face it, most people do for a hobby, you know. Some people are doing it seriously, but most people, many people are doing it for a hobby. Aboriginal people do it because it's the meaning of life, actually. It's the meaning of life, but because they're finding it, a whole lot of people are finding it hard to even survive, you know, they've got to do it when they can, actually, too, you know. I just think a whole lot of things have to be started to be looked at, really, in conjunction with a whole lot of other stuff. And it sounds like an overwhelming, a punishing kind of responsibility. But for one thing that for Europeans, they could pick up very quickly, and I don't think it takes any great, no great thinking about it, is that to realise that you're not alone in the world. I think Europeans from a long time ago have thought, and maybe it started with their own Greek philosophy, maybe it started when big agriculture came into being, but they imagine that they're alone in the world and that the whole of life is a survivalist situation where you have to fight like mad because the environment and other peoples are always going to be potentially hostile. So you've got to look after number one first. So people have lived their lives, and not only Europeans, I'm not saying that, other cultures too, have lived their lives as if that's all that matters. And here's this ancient place here that didn't compete, didn't give in to the survivalist ethos or the competitive ethos, which comes from that 10, 12,000 years ago, big agriculture. And it's a competitive ethos is just simply part of the survivalist ethos. They didn't give in to that. They pursued a relationalist ethos. That is where you work together all the time, whether you like each other or not. It's all right not liking each other and having a fight. That's all. There's heaps of dreaming stories about how blackfellas had this battle or that war with each other and so on. It's all there. But they didn't invade one another. That was where they held back. That's why you can look at the Aboriginal map. You see hundreds and hundreds of places, possibly thousands. Now, if invasion had been a concept that we took up as a hobby, like a whole lot of places around the world did, you would see less or fewer languages. Because what does an invader do? An invader forces the invader to talk the invader's language. That's the first thing they do. And of course they did that to Aboriginal people too, but everybody from the Romans on, you know, did that too. I know it sounds a huge task, but I think a whole lot of people have to start from the beginning about and re-look at the beginning as in 10, 12,000 years ago, big agriculture, because you know that's what they're fighting about now around the world. That's what they're fighting about. They're fighting about who will control all the world's resources. And the environment is just one of them. Do you know what I mean? Which includes extractive stuff. But now it's come into all the technology, whiz-bang technology, you know, who should run it? That's what all these wars are about. So it would be a wonderful if you just promise yourselves one thing, and that you try and work hard as anything, writing, acting, protesting, and so on, to try and steer Australia and the third-rate leaders. I'm sure he means well. It's a good bloke, Albanese, you know, who knows? We'll know in about 6 months, for sure. But there are signs already, you know. But we have to try to get it through people's minds, that especially the people who see themselves as leaders, to try and come up with a different global governance system, because that's what's desperately needed now. And a lot of good, very good, excellent writers are saying that a different governance, global governance system. It's too late for poor old Karl Marx. Nobody wants an ideology anymore like that, or any ideology. The religious community, you know, the churches, they're all bankrupt, morally bankrupt now. So nobody's looking for that either. So somehow it's got to come back to working out a system of looking after land. However, and there are other ideas, citizens' assemblies. That's a good invention, actually, that I've only read about, that whitefellas in the UK I've heard about coming together. That is like their jury system, a whole bunch of whitefellas or fellas, people, getting together and exercising what they like to call democracy. So I think democracy is a bit of a gamble, actually. You know, I don't have much faith in it at all. And thank heavens we're not Democrats, you know, but we have our own system, you know, consensus, you know, don't rely on individuals, you know, consensus, that's the way to go. So we need a different system. You've got to realize, that's the first thing, but in order to do that, you've got to realize you are not alone in the world. That has come down through thousands of, you call it what you like, wars, battles, conflicts, competitiveness, all the great, including the philosophies, which I admire tremendously, by the way. I do admire them, but a lot of it is too much about, you know, how should I live? You know, how should I live? You can rephrase that as in, how can I survive? How should I survive? Actually, easily, Socrates said that, you know, just change the word live for survive. That's what it actually means, you know. That's my, you know, I'll argue with a philosopher about that. And it's a good idea to have a logic like ours too. It wouldn't do any harm, as in all perspectives are valid and reasonable. It means being non-judgmental, you know. And of course, the practical things, the actual looking after the land, protest or whatever you like, you know, however you want to do it. But in a short line, I can think of to describe our own system without going into all the secret stuff. I wouldn't talk about that even if I did know it or could. Our own old system is a sacralized, ecological, collaborative stewardship system. So that's a collective meaning of life. So you can't afford to be lonely. Don't get over this loneliness stuff, you know, and adopt a collective philosophy of life, that is to be stewards. And then because you're all individuals, then you can have your own individual meaning of life. And that can be anything, you know, take a pick a card, you know, pick a meaning of life, whatever it is, ideology or religion. But the collective one is to be stewards of the country. So we are stuck in this position now, Aboriginal people, of because our stewardship never ends. Our law of obligation can't ever end. It mustn't end. We have to keep doing it, and even including, and I agree with you, Tyson, we should have been more upfront about this, that this is what whitefellas have to learn. They'll learn the best way of looking after the country. And that's a two-step thing. The relationship between land and people, and the relationship between people. And the relationship between people is always got to be contingent on the relationship between people and land. So the great care of looking after land, that becomes a template for the kind of political and social ordering system that we have. That's enough.
Thanks, Arnie.
Yep.
Michelle,
So it's not hard, is it?
Well, yeah, it's not.
It's going to be practically impossible.
Do you
Well,
want to go through some of those questions there, Michelle?
yeah, there's a lot of
There's a lot
different-
there.
Well, there's a lot of comments too. So I
Oh,
don't know if-
comments. Okay.
I'm really happy to read a
Just
snippet of them and
Well,
know.
yeah, just a couple of interesting ones. I just noticed one here that I have an opinion about, but I'll let it slide for the moment.
Okay, well, maybe we'll come back to it later when we're all relaxed and tired and happy to get contentious, love, get contentious. First, number of people were sending love, kindness, and condolences to folks as we were sharing that silence for Uncle. Lots of people feeling happy to be joining us. And then we did have this question about, can we find a more nuanced term than non-Indigenous? I think we've covered that one. A lot of people are settling on earthling. I think that's a nice word. I suggested committed earthling. Tyson said we need a new model of allyship. Absolutely.
Yes, good.
Yeah. Some folks saying that they're happy to be called a colonizer or a settler because it's the truth. And
well, look, if there's a fella there called Zol de Ishtar, and he's calling
A lady.
It's a lady. That's
and she's calling herself a white fella, then all right.
Yes.
That's the least white name I've ever heard.
Yeah.
I think.
No, she's lived with blackfellas for decades and decades. Actually, she knows a great deal.
Zol's been on all of our Earth Laws
Lovely old girl.
events.
Thank you, my friends. I
That's
really appreciate that. And
Okay,
nice to see you again, Tyson. Even if you don't know who I am.
I know. I'm looking through the thing. Where's she at?
There she is.
There she is with the hat on.
The camera off at the top, hat on.
So
Awesome name, yeah.
She was at uni, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Gotcha. Sweet.
I'm Celtic Irish inherited.
Celtic Irish. All right.
Here, me too.
It's a name like Zol.
Sounded like
Zol is my
riding a
chosen
camel.
name.
Oh,
riding a camel
sure,
or
love.
something.
I never knew that. Oh. Okay.
There's other people just saying g'day and welcoming them to country. Barbara saying, yes, Auntie Mary, this is what we have to do. We've got to go back to where the wrong story began, when it said that God made man in his image and gave man dominion over the earth.
Where's the woman?
We need an ontological revolution. Yeah, where are the women? Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, where the women at?
Where's the women?
And that was the contentious one. I think I was having issues with. Dominion doesn't mean murder, slaughter, genocide.
Yes.
In order to have dominion,
Yes.
that's not it at all. I mean, the whole logic of having that biblical terms used in such a divisive and aggressive manner to create wars across this whole planet, whether you're a believer or not, that story or that narrative is simply not that.
I think somebody slipped that word in there, actually, myself.
Yeah, and then
I'm sure.
have the paper bulls then justify those terms by sending out the colonists and just saying you can have dominion. If you can't turn them into Christians, then you can kill them. And God will love you when you can go to heaven or wherever. So, I mean, the whole notion gets me fired up. Sorry.
Yes. Look, I was just trying to think of a word like ally, but I was thinking, why not the word that people can aim to become countrymen? You know what I mean? We have all the blackfellas, all blackfellas have countrymen, people who are sort of related or sort of kind of related or whatever. So I sometimes get called this by Uncle Bob, our Uncle Bob up here anyway, from Stratty. He'll call me that because we're connected. Anderson, Uncle Bob Anderson. Hey, countryman, he'll say, So if people wanted to become like countrymen too, white fellas I'm talking about,
I think Siggy's got a hand up. Is that right?
Yeah, we just need to sort out the situation with land first.
Land, yes.
That's the elephant in the room. At the moment, land isn't land. That's separated from all of us by this abstraction.
Absolutely, it's property.
It's been turned into real estate. That's a whole different layer of abstraction. Land is not land. Land is blocks. Units of value that can be speculated on into infinity.
Yes.
And you can get a mortgage against these things. So then you can have money that you can then go and invest somewhere else and speculate and get your passive income happening.
Yeah.
It's a financial layer that's over our
Yes.
landscape.
And
And I don't know if you,
Yeah.
you know, you want to go, oh, how come I can't be a countryman kind of thing too, just because I'm white or whatever. It's
well,
like,
you've got to act like it there first.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
you know, give me your land then. So
Yeah.
it's like you're still holding capital, and you're still holding to
Yeah.
a system of capital that needs to be protected by walls, dogs, police, you know, people who have a monopoly on violence, who are your people. And I don't mean your people as in white people, but you might
No,
be from
no.
India or anywhere, but your people in terms of, you know, the people who are privileged enough to hold land
Yeah.
as capital
Absolutely.
here.
Protecting
Land
privilege.
is 2/3 of the world's capital.
Mm.
And this
And
is a monolithic system. We're not going to get rid of it overnight, and it's not something
No.
that you can overturn by any revolution or anything. But you know, there's things that we need to sort out first. It's difficult if you're holding capital to then go to somebody, you know, a traditional owner who doesn't have any capital and who doesn't have any land, any freehold title in that
And then
place,
say we
has-
want to walk
has
on
no
your
rights to
country.
that. And it's like, you know, you know, teach me your secrets. Can I be Indigenous too? And it's like, well, yeah, all right, auntie, if you like. But you know, it's not going to be much fun down here. You can pop down if you like. And let me tell you, eventually you're going to be here anyway, because we're all in the same freaking canoe. It's just
Yes.
it's going to take a while for that bubble to pop. But it's that bubble is that membrane there is getting more and more permeable all the time.
Yeah.
You'll be getting more and more ice addicts walking up and down your street. And
Yes.
when you walk
Well,
down
here on the coast, it'll be
you're like, what's
underwater.
this going on? I don't want social housing on my block. It's like,
Yes.
you know,
That's right.
it's
And
coming.
That's right.
let's build a
Yes.
or let's
There's
build a
not enough
wall.
space.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sigrid.
Yeah.
Sig,
So-
is it Siggy? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying Sig Hale.
Hey, look at
Well,
that. Oh,
Well,
it's just my
hey,
tooth
yeah.
missing.
Oh,
You
right.
shave
don't
his
wanna
head for a
become-
reason.
See.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Sig.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to talk to what Mary was talking to. Mary, I don't know if you remember me. I'm a Guinea doctorate student, and I was in Ballina when you were there, and I
yes,
was the one
yes.
on the floor drawing.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yes, I do remember. How are you? I didn't recognise your name. No.
No.
I should recognise it. Yes.
Yeah. So I suppose when you were talking and there's all this stuff going on that can be really overwhelming, but like probably, you know, over 10 years ago, Auntie, now I'm going to forget names because I'm stuttering. Auntie Caroline Briggs said to me, she said, held me up by the shoulders and she looked at me really seriously and she said, remember, we are country. I just went, whoa, you know, like this is really important. And ever since that time, like about 6 months later, things started dropping in. Like it just kept on coming and swimming in my head and going out, swimming in my head. So anyway, I suppose the reason why I'm saying this is because that connection to place, like I don't use the term country because
No, that's right.
not my, you know, like it's multi-dimensional place that I don't have deep understanding about and can't. But I started doing regen work and I go up there nearly every day. And I came to be so humbled by that, what Auntie Caroline said, and it makes me think that, you know, we can care for the environment because we're so threatened on that basis,
Yeah.
but actually caring for the environment because you are humbled, because you are one species among many is really different. To me, it's to really understand that you have to get into feeling it too. It's not just and so that whole thing about where we're always so operating you know, from a cognitive, you know, like intellectual, academic or whatever, it's like that whole thing about feeling the knowledge.
Well, there's a great book that you could buy. It's a paperback by Uncle Bill Needy, He died now. Great law,
Right.
Feeling,
senior
beautiful
lawman.
country.
The story of feeling, and he
Okay.
maintains, and I think this goes for all of us anyway, all the psychologists, that feeling makes us human, unlike the science. Tyson, the science says we are our brains, actually. And I know I've watched all these YouTube docos about how the brain works, and it's fascinating and all that. But feeling, that's what he says, and it's just wonderful how he says it too, because English is his 6th or 7th language or something, you know.
Okay, thanks for that. Normally I would want to have a bit of a chat, but if we can just stick things into the chat room,
Sorry.
because I'd like to have a bit more of a conversation with Tyson and Auntie Mary about the topics that you're going to put in there.
Mm.
But just out of respect for Sig, I thought I might give one person an opportunity to anyway. So thanks for that, Sig.
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask questions.
Yeah. So if you want to put in your little questions into the side there or make comments, that'd be great. And Auntie, did you want to talk a little bit about Bill Nugent and that book?
No, not much, but it is wonderful. It's like poetic.
Yeah.
It's like famous Irish writer. What's his name? It's a wonderful book. Well famous. The only way to read it is to read it aloud.
Oh, yeah. That's
Irish.
right. Yeah.
You know, it's famous. Oh, isn't it awful? I can't think of it now at the moment. But this is how you have to read the story of feeling. Read it out loud. And he talks about a tree. Oh, nice tree, this, you say. And it talks about the sap. Sap in the tree, or, any plant life, is the same as the blood in our veins. He says you have to recognize that. And he talks about, I think, if I remember correctly, it might be somebody else, you're lying down either by a campfire or in your own bed, and you turn over, you're on one side, you turn over. You know how we sooner or later turn over to the other side? Well, see yourself as turning over slowly over to the other side. And it's the same as the world is turning around to. You're turning with the world turning, and it's a real sense. You just don't realize how big it is, all is, and why it matters, why it matters. And of course it bloody matters, but why it's sacred is because if it wasn't there, we'd be floating through space, so we better look after it.
Yeah. Tyson, you had a book out, the recent one. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I'm fascinated with that book.
Oh yeah, all right. Well, I just finished last week.
Yes, I haven't got that.
I finished a manuscript for Sand Talk 2.
Okay.
Good.
I did not know that. Thank you.
It comes out next year, like mid next year or something. So it'll be a while. But the next one's called, I don't know if they'll keep the title. They didn't for the first one. The title I've put on it is The Tree That Kills You Back. Which is
true. But it doesn't fall on you, does it?
Throwing down the gauntlet a little bit. But anyway, I think they feel like that's a bit aggressive, but we'll see if they keep it. I don't think they will. They didn't keep the title of my first book. So that title's Sand Talk, How Indigenous Thinking Can Save the World.
Yeah.
It's very popular.
Not my title, and I don't even agree with it particularly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's extremely popular, Hardly anybody I have met who hasn't read it, hasn't got it.
Okay, because I was wondering.
We have to ask, what was your original title?
Yes.
It was Forever LTD.
Forever LTD.
What's that mean?
See, I know exactly. No one knew.
Forever limited?
You just made that up.
No, it's true. It was that idea that everything good, and this was my contention, and you can see it in a few places in the book where it remains, is that Indigenous knowledge always gets sort of taken up and extracted, and even our best knowledge always ends up getting co-opted and turned into something that it's not. It turned into a byline, turned into a product, turned into a platitude, turned into something else. But I guess the idea was, I thought that the worst outcome of the book, and this is written in the book, in the chapter that's called Forever Limited, I thought the worst outcome would be that everyone would start reading the book and that Western civilization would embrace it.
Yes.
Because in doing so, they'll kill it.
Yeah, they would. Yes.
You know what I mean? And it ends up becoming they understand our deep time you know, Aboriginal time. I understand this. I understand what forever means. And then they start doing workshops, and then that becomes a company, which is called Forever Ltd kind of thing.
Oh, I see.
So then it's forever.
Oh, limited.
Limited. Forever
Limited. Right.
It's
that's
just
okay.
it's too up in your head. You know,
Right,
like
I just got that.
I didn't mind that they put that title down. I just thought it would be like a cryptic thing. People go, what does that mean? But they were like, no, how about sand talk? How Indigenous thinking can save the world. And this fella, I got a friend, Native Alaskan friend, Arlo Davis, who I love him to death. We're always yarning. Native Alaskan fella, and he's like, and I'm right behind him. He started writing his reply to my book, and it's called Snow Talk.
Deadly. That's
How
deadly.
Indigenous thinking can't save the world. And that's going to be his talk back from the other hemisphere.
Yes.
And we have some really good yarns.
I've got a couple of questions here. One's directly for Tyson now, and then I'm going to go back to Zol's question, actually. Barbara's asked, sorry, it is Barbara, but there's one from, I think it was Dominique saying, how can we walk together without westernizing it, you know, without taking it, without, these are my words now, turning it into a fluffy toy and a marketing trick?
Yeah.
How do we walk together, Tyson? How do we not co-op?
Well, the answer is in, and this is what will bring us around, and I'll do it real quick, bring us around to our big main topic, and which is framing everything here. And I guess the first part of our talk has been framed by grief today. But if we, the idea of the purpose of this session is to frame up definitions around regeneration. You know, so that we have one vision of what regenerative cultures are, what a regenerative life, ideology, whatever is. And so I can frame that up real quick with a really simplistic binary heuristic, since that's a chunking tool and it's worth doing sometimes. But basically, degenerative, because there's two kinds of people in the world, all right? Beatles fans and Elvis fans. It's like this. So there's degenerative people and regenerative people. Degenerative people say, get off my lawn. And regenerative people say, get on my mulch, like that. So so we can frame it up like that as a way to go forward. As that sound? So there's degen versus regen. But you know what? That was kind of a joke, because I don't know, when we get these binaries and we set ourselves up and define ourselves as being in opposition to something else, then all you end up with is pseudoscience, because that's pretty much the definition of pseudoscience.
Yes.
You never actually say what your values, beliefs, you know, protocols, findings, anything are. It's just, well, so what's your message? Well, the opposite of their message. We're not them.
It's a pity.
Who are you? We're not them.
Well, that's that people there. That's that bloody logic.
Yeah,
that's the logic, you know, that's come down to us from a long time ago too.
That's
either
it.
or. And you know, when people are talking about, every now and then I get caught up in discussions about these wars going on.
Yeah.
Well, and the first thing somebody will ask is, which side are you on? You know, and I say I'm not on any bloody side. The side that I am on is that of very, very good, deep analysis, context and history. That's the side I'm on. I'm not on any particular country's side or anything. I want to know more about what it is about and how it got to be like that, you know.
You know what's
like
really interesting about war is what history records about Aboriginal warfare. What is the things that they're interested in, and what they're always interested in. They're not interested in how it is that we managed to have plenty of battles but no wars.
That's
the whole time.
That's right.
And didn't do an imperialism. And kept a small, and kept really tiny, lots and lots patchwork quilt. Except for something must have gone on with them Gamilaroi and Wiradjuri fellas, I tell you, because
they're good fighters.
Every time I look at the map, I go, hang on, that's pretty big.
Oh yeah, it was big, eh? Yeah.
Anyway, I always tease them about that, and they don't laugh. Anyway, but yeah. So what do they look for? And what's in the history books in Australia about Aboriginal warfare, it's always about the leaders, the military leaders that emerged. Mosquito, Pomeroy, Jandamara, Windradine, all these famous names.
Yes.
We kind of revere their names as well. But it's funny, right across the board with all of them, what happened to them? They were all murdered by their own people, by the treacherous blacks. We finished them. Those people, those great military leaders. And there's a freaking reason for that. Because this is people who saw that we had to have a massive standing army in order to stand against this invading force that had a massive standing army. And so what starts to emerge in that is hierarchies. There's military style structures and hierarchies. And I reckon, like from the stories that I've been told, is that our old people looked at that and went, nah,
not a good idea.
Better that they kill us all.
Yes.
Better that these invaders kill us all than we become them through this. And so always those great leaders who rose to the top in those frontier wars, they always ended up getting taken out and
Yes.
taken down.
Well,
and the big force scattered and ended up being in small bands, guerrilla warfare, which was heaps more. That's what we did on the Cape. That's what most of the Gulf country, that was all those big battles up there that were fought. They weren't big battles. They were skirmishes, and they were done with small bands of half a dozen women, half a dozen men running around stealing this one, spearing people in their sleep, burning this one down, bloody taking supplies, smashing things in the dark, hit and run, and they couldn't catch them with a horse. So that's why it took so long, and that's why up north, it's we got like a century of peace that other people didn't get. It's simply because of that. We went more immediately into guerrilla style warfare because it was more culturally appropriate, more appropriate for the land. Arguably, we're in war here. In this Regenerative Songlines network, we're not going to have a big top-down structure for the thing.
No.
We need to have lots of
Thank
different
God.
cells. Let's call them cells.
Cells.
Yeah, let's get ourselves on a list somewhere. Let's call them cells, all just operating. And I guess people can autonomously develop those cells. And so I'd like to acknowledge who's missing tonight, too, because she's often talking about that and is really keen to get those groups started.
Alana.
Alana.
Yeah.
Alana. Oh, yes, right.
Hopefully Alana can join us tomorrow and talk about her the nesting and the nest ideas.
Yeah, nests.
Yeah.
Nests.
And
I call them cells.
Yeah, but inside we've built for the last 6 years the new economy network, and it's based on hubs. Everyone just comes together around areas of interest and shares back into the network, and then they step forward to share stuff whenever they want, tell people what they're up to. And that model's working pretty well. There's a few coordinators in the middle. White fellas call it distributed governance, where there's no controlling power over what people do. The housing mob, they're doing their housing week in November. They're bringing 35 organizations together. No one's standing in their way what they're talking about. And then different people on different issues and systems change. So maybe we can have some distributed governance cells coming together and sharing.
Yeah.
Let me put you on the spot, Tyson. How can people walk with you, with Ross, with Mary? How can folks come along on a journey with you to care for place and care for country?
Yeah.
Do you have thoughts on that, or
find your own right way and bring it to the table?
Agree.
That's it, because that's how we do. You'll be respected. If you come with something, you come with something and you're saying it out loud because it feels clever to you, or you're feeling passionate about it, and everyone's eyes glaze over and people go and then nothing happens. And it feels
it's really
awkward,
about finding.
Then probably stop you and go away and look for something else and then come back. But you find the real story, and I'll talk about it later because I've talked too much now. But there's a real story of agriculture, and that's not what's in the books either. 100 years ago, most agriculture, even in Europe, was being done really, really freaking well. Because most people on the planet 100 years ago were still living on farms, and on those farms there was no clear distinction between the domesticated animals and the wild animals. Those farms were all connected by commons of forest and pasture and meadow, and that kind of agriculture. I've had this Dutch fella telling me his great grandfather's ways on that one, and it sounds pretty much the same as us. They burned country. They did all kinds of things. It's just a freaking century ago, people.
Yes.
It's just a century ago. Most people on the planet, including Europeans, were taken off the land. So, and driven into
off.
and the textbooks just talk about, crop rotation in the 15th century kind of thing. They'll tell you all that stuff. They'll tell you about the Green Revolution, but that lie, it's a lie. All that story. The story of agriculture is a much, much better one. And, you're not starting from scratch building up permaculture. There's old ways. There's old ways that are there, and you can find them because it's not in books, but it's in intergenerational relations. Well, people who know about it, and it's in your bones, it's in your freaking cells. There's muscle memory for that.
And Tyson,
bring that to the table. Bring that inquiry to the table, and all be good.
The Industrial Revolution, and there's some amazing, when you start looking at the growth of industrialization in Britain, the interesting thing is how life was 10 years before factories started, and you're right, there was these quiet rural ways of living, and there's a lot to be learned in actually studying this massive explosion of cities and just reflection.
They were frightened of tractors. They were frightened of those, what do you call them, steam engines, people on the farm.
And the group called the Luddites were actively trying to stop, get this, how relevant is it to AI today, but they were actively trying to stop the mechanization of weaving and textiles, etc., from stopping people from having a life, a rural life, and a job and work.
Yes, yeah.
But Mary, I think I interrupted you, and I'm sorry about that. When I said to Tyson, how do people walk with Indigenous folks here in Australia? How do we do that? And I think you were about to say, Tyson said, find your own way and the right way and join. And
bring it to the fire.
Bring it. And can I just vouch?
You weren't actually trying to say get out of the way, were you, Tyson?
No. And don't.
You want to walk with us? Well, get out of the way.
Listening in our way is not shut up and listen.
No.
Just shut up and listen.
I'm only joking.
Bullshit. Don't do that.
Joking.
No, but that stuff, that hashtag shut up and listen.
Is it?
And
Right.
just
no,
listening.
I don't.
It's this whole thing about how to be a good ally. I'm just shutting up.
Really?
I'm going to shut my big white mouth and I'm just going to shut up and listen. It's like,
I didn't even know that. That's rude.
But there's there's not either or. Like you're not either dominating the conversation or shutting up and listening. If you've got something to bring, you bring it.
Well, one thing when you're talking about war before, I was very curious about war myself. I've had 7 brothers. See, 3 of them were in different wars, in Malaya, Korea and that. But I was curious about. I was watching this wonderful documentary about all the famous wars in history, not only European but all other ancient ones too. The Punic Wars. The Romans and the Persians, or the Greeks and the Persians, and the Chinese with their 400 warring states period, 400-year warring states period. And the one thing I did strike me there was warlike people who war all the time, tactics are very important to them. Tactics are not all that great for us. We're good where we can do. It's not as if we can't do it. We can do it. We just don't do it. And one of our best tactics was the old tents on the front lawn. The tents on the front lawn, highly, highly embarrassing to the Australian government at the time, because all these foreign embassies and people coming out and talking to black fellas, what's all this? What's going on? Why do they have to have their own embassy? Blah, blah, blah. It's terrible. And they were furious, the Australian government, furious. And at the time, I always thought that's a good tactic. But of course, being warlike, Australians, white fellas or Europeans, they come back with a better tactic. Of course, this is what they do. And they invented Aboriginal affairs. And that just cut us off. That just took away any kind of political strength, energy. And this is how bloody liberalism works for everybody. It does good things, but then it does terrible things. Good things, people got jobs, which is great. The organizations started, but our political identity was just gone. That's it.
That's
and
why
it's
I don't
been
trust
like
them.
that. No,
I don't trust
no,
them when they want
no.
to center my
no.
voice.
Well,
When
what?
they want to center native voices, I don't trust
No,
that.
that's right.
I
That's
never
exactly
trust
right.
that. It's like,
No.
yeah, nah, my
No.
voice doesn't need to be at
Yep.
your center.
But what we are good at is
Yeah.
strategy, long-term strategy. I
Yeah.
mean, this is extremely long-term strategy, tens of thousands of years,
Yeah.
but it works because we worked it out. We
Oh,
worked
yeah.
things out.
Well, I think once
and to me, that's the relationship between white fellas and black fellas. You have to think in those terms, very long term, and all that stuff that you talk about, cells and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, set about what do you call it? Establishing them. Building them and so on, and take time with it. Don't think you're in the middle of a bloody revolution or anything like that, because all revolutions do is replace what they've done away with the same thing. It doesn't work.
Well, that's when I have a theory that after those Aboriginal armies that formed during the invasion temporarily as a test case, and then split up and distributed out into guerrilla cells throughout the countryside and became more effective. Yeah, I got theories about that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
No,
And
and I've forgotten the theory now, laying down the context, unfortunately, but I'll remember it in a sec.
I was just going to say, Ross, sort of the same question. Tyson and Mary have shared some beautiful ideas about how to put your own stuff going and bring it to the table and form up long-term relationships. I mean, I'd love your thoughts, but can I just say, I mean, that's kind of what me and Ross and Mary have done, eh? We kind of, Mary does many, many things, and so does Ross, but we banded together to just be the three of us yarning up and telling stories through the workshops we do at Future Dreaming. That's one of our contributions to exploring together what a future looks like. Mary and I are working on a book on the relationist ethos and what it might mean for our society. And, they're just ideas. They're all just experimenting together.
And I work with the philosophy mob too, Tyson, over at UQ, for what it's worth. They're lovely people. And the idea is to, because this place is only 200-300 years old as a modern Australia, white fellas running it and all that. They've got to learn to start thinking for themselves and not be a follower all the time, because they're in the best place in this part of the world, Australasia. Just to the north, there's these humongous big civilizations, plus they've got this civilization here. They couldn't be more lucky, really, even though we're getting the worst of it, because they haven't learned yet what civilization really is. And please, everybody listening, don't think I'm insulting white fellas by saying they're uncivilized. I'm saying you've got to think about what that actually means to run a country. Truly stand on your own feet, own yourself, not always look for somebody to protect, because I know in the political sphere it's called Australia is called a peripheral power, so they're always got to be looking for a powerful other country to look after them, and they'll be safe, and so on and so on. They'll be more safe if they own themselves and learned from Aboriginal people how to run a country. Because we're the ones who actually invented running a country. We invented governance,
Yeah.
But nobody, I don't know what the anthropologists say, but I'm saying to them, we worked out a system that has been around since before the rise of states, and it was lasting all that time. Do you know what I mean? And don't think, we got beaten when the white fellas came here. We didn't get beaten. We got a hiding. Lots of victimization going on, but I always insist, and I say this to young people too, we are not victims. Don't even think of yourself as a victim. We are owners and runners of country, and you have to talk and act like that all the time. It doesn't mean being cheeky and bad manners to people or anything like that. Just be absolutely aware of whose country this is, and make other people realize that too. And tell them again, you're very lucky you have us. They don't realise, white fellas. You don't really realise it. One day.
You do, Mary. Everyone on this call gets it. That's why we're here. So
I'm talking about in the general terms.
Yeah, not us. Them.
They don't.
And
don't start that.
I'm guessing people on this webinar want to, learn to unpack what they think they know, repack that with experience and a bit more knowledge from us. And we can only pass on our experience and knowledge, and then you take that and then load up your experiences as human beings. And that's
Yes.
one of the critical things, and then you'll package yourself together and find you and yourself. And then you'll come back, as Tyson said, you then come back with humility, not
Humility,
with
yes.
suggestions that all the things. We don't.
Oh, God.
And there's a purpose, there's a reason why we have these two things and only one of these.
Yes.
One
Yes.
mouth and two ears. So we've got to doubly listen. And
I wish
that's
I
the
wish-
next one,
I wish I had a cent. Oh, sorry, go on.
no, you're right, Arnie.
I wish I had a cent for every time a taxi driver said, "What you people should do,"
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Oh,
you think,
bloody advice.
hello.
Oh, God, please don't.
Look, and one of the things I continue to say is that we had, and we still have, a contract with this country and our planet. This is 60,
That's what it's like.
it's to 80,000 year contract. And 230 years, that contract has been damaged and that contract has been torn up. And that, in an effort to suppress and can disconnect us from our country. So it's an appalling process. And that contract, that contract said, I'll look after you if you look after me. And so we didn't do that by accident. We done that by learning, by experience, by becoming those naturalists, becoming those chemists in this country, by studying the earth and studying the plants and animals and astronomy.
I mean,
it taught us everything, but we lost that. We're starting to lose that disconnect. But non-Indigenous people, however you want to call it, white people or whatever, it's long gone.
Soon to be countrymen.
It's the word dominion. And I want to bring you to just a quick one. And I haven't gone to her, seminar, but there's this young lady, it's Camilla Pang. And she comes up with this analogy. And when I read it, I thought, I just absolutely got it. And she said, humans are weird creatures with obscure social customs, complex interpersonal relationships, and baffling unwritten rules. She's a scientist who has, she was diagnosed with autism on the autism spectrum, but she just couldn't get her head around human beings and what that meant. Who are you? What do you do?
They don't make sense.
It doesn't, and for her, it didn't make sense. And I'm disappointed that I missed one of her seminars, but I'm going to have a listen on what she thinks a human being should be. Being a human being. I mean, it's really fascinating for me when somebody as young as that can analyze it through a different lens, and that's what it boils down to.
Thanks, Ross. Hey, Tyson wrote that he's remembered his theory. What is that? What are you on about?
What?
Sybil, I was just talking about the warfare before. I had a theory. It's a bit funny, but it's kind of might be true too. But just that the old fellas decided after they tried doing armies and didn't work, and then they did guerrilla. I think that everyone sat down and went, okay, we'll just make it a really long war, like about 300 years, and our main and the tactic will be miscegenation. We're going to breed these fellas out.
Oh my God.
So then it was just,
Yes.
So we're just breeding everyone out. If you look at the stats about declining non-Aboriginal birth rates and increasing Aboriginal birth rates, and you do the projections, it's about another 80, 90 years before everybody in Australia is Aboriginal again. So
they're very worried about it in
your
America.
grandkids have got that. The great.
They're panicking like mad.
That's it. And I wanted to sing out for Siggy from earlier. There was something I wanted to unpack there. And it's really important when you come to the table. There's almost like people have been cursing themselves lately because they think it's sensitive to do so or something. And I keep hearing people say this. And when you were talking about your connection to place and land and how you felt about that, and then you had to put a disclaimer there saying, of course, I don't know that, and I can never know that. You didn't say I can never know, but you said I can't know that. You said I don't know that and I can't know that.
No, in terms of using the term country. country
Yeah,
with
yeah.
a capital C,
Yeah, yeah.
so I use place.
But you,
Oh, I
you said
see. Right.
you said this thing that I keep hearing people say.
Yeah.
I don't know that, and I can't know that. There's nothing wrong with I don't know that, but coming to the table with already this idea that you can't. So you can't. Maybe you can't politically. You're not allowed to, or that
I've
someone's
thought
going to flog you if you do, or whatever.
No,
But
Unable
the
to.
idea that inherently you don't have the capacity to know country or be country, the idea that there's no hope because somehow there's some freaking biological thing in anyone from the Northern Hemisphere whereby they can't know or be or do country or have country or come into country or anything. That idea that you can't know that, it's only been like a century since you got off it.
Yeah, wait for 1,000 years.
And for at least the first half of that, your family probably didn't have privilege in there anyway. That's a very recent thing, that privilege that's sort of been conferred, and that the comforts of modernity and industrial civilization, all the rest. It's not. It's you can't say can't. Like I reckon we should
Tyson,
ban.
flip
ban
it
the
around,
word.
Tyson. Put that in a positive. That answers the question.
Oh, I thought I was being
Can
positive.
I respond?
Yeah.
That's about as positive as I get.
Sorry,
That's me being supportive and saying,
Oh,
you
okay.
can know. You
Yeah,
can
yeah,
know. Don't
yeah.
curse yourself. You come to learn. And I mean, if I was going to learn calculus, I couldn't go up to the maths teacher and say, "Oh, I don't know calculus, and I can't know calculus." There'd be no point being in the class.
Yeah, but to me, calculus is finite, whereas like I only have limited understanding at this stage in my journey. And country, how from an Indigenous perspective, how country is talked to is about multidimensional, multi-layered, connected, dreaming, song lines, and totem kinship. So I don't know whether in this lifetime I have the capacity to ever have a connection like that. And so I suppose maybe
you have the capacity, the context that you're in,
not
the
for that
society
long
that you're
length
in.
of time.
The society that you're in doesn't. The society that you're in doesn't have the capacity,
right?
No, that's
for you
right.
to be able to get there,
Right.
and that's fine. But you never know what might change in the next decade. Things will change if people suddenly find themselves walking up to blackfellas and asking where the water is. Things will be different.
I understand what you're saying.
I'm just basically. Yeah, never say never. Like I know that everyone has to say, "Oh, I can't know that." It's like, well, and you're not getting in trouble. You get it like you can't walk in and say, "I want to know that," and I can know it, and I know it or something. Then everyone's going to roll their eyes and throw things at you. But you don't have to pronounce that you can't know it. Because
it's a good message, Tyson.
It's kind of racist. It suggests that there's something biologically wrong with you that would prevent you from ever making a connection to land.
No.
And so if there is some biological difference in you that prevents that, then that means there's a biological difference in me that makes me inferior as well in other ways. And that would suggest that race exists and it's an actual freaking real thing. And we know it's not. And I guess, Ross, to answer your question from earlier, what's my book about? It was basically putting an argument that human beings are a custodial species.
Yeah, good on you.
We're the same species, all of us. Human beings are a custodial species, and that's what we're here for. That's our ecological
That's
niche.
right. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's it.
Stewardship.
As the environment is what the colour in, and then we've artificially tried to separate out different people from different locations. The environment has created us. The environment has changed us
We're
physically
into it.
And genetically. So we're all in this together. And they're all saying, there's one planet, and how do we live within the framework? I've read a recent article around how whiteness was created, and why that was created and the purpose by which it is. That's not it. Anybody can have connection to country and understand what that means. And Michelle for me is a good example. Michelle's relationship to blue banded bees is brilliant,
Yes.
Gentle obsession, baby.
It becomes an obsession because she understands it. She feels the bees. She sees their environment. and the context by which they survive and they live and thrive.
Mm.
And when they're not there, Michelle goes into meltdown. Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
I've seen her.
He's heard me in November when the bees haven't come out yet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
And so,
yeah, that's
yeah.
beautiful. I just wanted to sort of firstly let folks know we've got 10 minutes left, but
Yes.
also I think what we're hearing from Tyson and Ross and Mary is this invitation to be part of you know, country and to love place. And there's so many ways to do that. So I mean, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, but certainly every time I work with Ross and Mary and Anne and Tyson and others, there is a feeling of, come on, just get in, just do something. You know, we don't have to tiptoe. And someone made a really good comment in there saying, sometimes I think it's the white fellas, not Indigenous people, who are tiptoeing on eggshells. They're the ones that are worried about doing the wrong thing. And that's got a deep, strange, long history of white people trying to come back from their colonial history and understand what the hell to do next. So I just want to flag with you guys that in our future dreaming workshops and stuff that others like Yin Paradise do with decolonizing, it really gives you permission to explore your history, understand the colonial history of this country, face it, and then move past it. Guilt comes from when you feel like you can't do something good and you're hanging on to these horrible, shitty memories. You got to face it, do the reading, do the watching, do the listening.
Yes.
It can paralyze you.
And then what? Yeah.
Paralyzes you into doing nothing.
That's it.
And that's what you got to move through.
You might make a mistake and we'll growl you.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're going to growl you, of course, but that's fine. We're not going to growl you as much as your own white ladies will growl you. I tell you this. Them ones think you've done something wrong online. No, they'll never let it go.
Tyson,
We might growl you, but we
hug
hug you at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And custodians.
So we have a
is good name.
protocol. We have a protocol in our lab where we're not allowed to call people out. Like what we do is we call people in.
Yeah.
You know, if someone goes the wrong way, you call them in to the right. Call them into the right way. You don't call them out and banish them straight away.
Yes, I know.
They'll be lucky if you treat them nice like that. When I was working with the Gungaloo folks way back in the 90s, Ross, I remember a couple of elders I didn't know spotted me, and I used to say later, they gutted me like a fish in a public place, and I didn't deserve it, but I took it. You know, I just copped it and got back up the next day after having a big cry and went back in and learned.
We have to cop that too from those fellas.
Yeah, we do too.
We're not the only ones.
Yes, absolutely.
I can tell you, Michelle has also got that from me. When I first met Michelle, I just didn't like her because she was representative of something that I didn't like, you know, a non-Indigenous person coming into the framework of Indigenous people. Here we are 20 odd years later, and we're the bestest of friends, you know. That's the journey of relationship.
Working together.
Yeah, working together.
Or growing.
Working through the process, and
Growing
I was
relation.
young and, you know,
And
back
keep
then.
Keep coming back, annoy people.
That's what she did. She annoyed me all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Be irritating. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure other people will be less irritating.
But
Can
I
I
love
suggest-
Michelle deeply, you know. It's just, and we've come through this whole process of understanding the journeys of not only ourselves respectively, but how the earth has brought us together.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to
true.
say.
And how we have to work together, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like what Mary talks about, you know, your Indigenous culture didn't have, you know, everyone singing Kumbaya. You had your bad days, your good days, but you were a group and you stuck together. So, hey, I'm aware that we've got 5 minutes left. I wonder, Tyson, Ross, and Mary, if you'd like to maybe have some final comments before we wrap up and let people go have their dinner.
I don't know.
Auntie Mary?
No, I don't know.
No.
I don't know what to say.
Look out.
For once,
I just threw up in the chat that maybe something to carry forward here as a sort of a bit of quest for all of us is that what we're seeking is a new model of allyship that you might, as a placeholder, just refer to as regenerative allyship. Maybe in regenerative spaces we need a different kind of allyship than what we're finding in all the survivalist spaces.
That's awesome.
yes, no, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that is fantastic.
And I just probably want to say, I'll allow Auntie Mary to have the last word, but just want to say, just be kind to yourself and don't berate yourself of things you don't know. We were in that place as well, and we've learnt through different means and elders and through cultural experiences. Just be gentle on yourself, work through it, navigate through some of the discussions. You've got a lot of options for information out there that you can access and enjoy, and just spend time in space with people. Don't ask too many questions.
No.
You'll develop a relationship, and the relationship is like every relationship is a long-term thing. And you'll get to understand the narrative, the language, and you'll get the energy from that if you're talking with Indigenous people, and particularly on country. And we're just presenting it on Zoom right now, but on country is where it's at. And if you get an opportunity to experience that in your local area, if there's a group that does tours or whatever to give you a different description of country and how they look at it, then just do it. And just use these things here, not this here.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's right, love. No.
Tyson,
Yeah, no, I just want to give you all good luck with it, because just think about this country is used to being looked after. Actually, there's these other old ideas about that a particular country, any particular country, actually knows who its people are. It can hear the language, but know the footsteps. I know it sounds strange, but they can smell their own people, so they're used to being looked after, actually. So I thought that's a wonderful tradition to keep going, So,
and Mary, you said
really
to me,
are like partners,
Yeah, you said to me once, I said something about watching nature and loving it and looking at it. And you said something that made me so happy. You say, well, when you're looking out at those trees, they're looking back at you. They know you're there.
They're watching you.
I love that.
And
they're hearing you.
They're hearing you. And
I see you.
Yeah. So they're just waiting, I guess.
Can we wrap up with just a call back to our sorry business here?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And that
Please, Tyson.
but this is something we can use this, because but one thing we do really well is death. As Aboriginal people, we do death really well. We have protocols and practices that we do in mourning that make us very high functioning mourners. It helps us get through that time. After that, it helps us crack jokes over a Zoom while there's water coming down our face. You might have to hold it for a minute or whatever, but seriously, like, let it out. If you can, I mean, that old fellow, someone touched everybody in this country, and
he's a terrific actor.
If you don't know, look him up, and look, if you can just find that moment to feel like grief with us, that really helps. There's protocols for me. Like I had to duck out before because I've got his painting on the wall there. I had to cover that one up now and wrap it up and put it away. I had to do that straight away when part of me was telling me before about it was the first I'd heard about it. But the protocols are good. Don't go shouting his name around the place too much. Don't go nuts on the images. But when you let that grief out, let it out really good, and let it out with people, and do it together, and you'll find that'll just carry you right through.
And his family,
we're all in mourning. Every one of us is in mourning for what's happening to this land, to this planet,
yes.
our people, our grandchildren, everything. Right now, we're all in a state of mourning and grief and shock, and we have to become high functioning mourners, because there's work to do. Because our enemy is smarter than us. So far, and our enemy is far more united than we are, and they don't fucking sleep. So we got to become high functioning mourners. So we learn from us in grief about how we carry that and how we get through it.
And his family asked us to we can use his image and his what's name, but be careful.
Right. Okay.
From Tyson, as Tyson said, from a cultural protocol, we just can't.
Just don't go nuts with it.
Don't go nuts with it. Just be very respectful, as you would with your own family. And if you ever get time, and there are his videos out there of the old fella, close your eyes and listen to his voice, and you'll go to places that you didn't know you could go to. from a cultural point of view and a beautiful soul point of view. So thank you, Tyson, for that.
Yeah,
You know,
thanks,
a
Tyson.
wonderful
Yeah.
wrap,
Thanks,
you know.
Butter, for
And,
Thanks, Ross, and
and
thanks,
we'll think
Michelle.
of Uncle Lunk for
everybody.
a long time to come, because he's imprinted on our hearts and in our minds. Thanks, Michelle, for hanging out with us.
Thanks
Thanks,
you.
everybody, for hanging out with us and having some good old yarns and good laughter and a little bit of sadness as well. And the slide of tears. And I get all that. I've had my little tears today. They're all salty water come out of my eyes. But that's part of the process, you know, of grief. And Tyson's right. We know how to do that in a very mindful, respectful, and beautiful way. That's one thing our mob do really well, is that cultural journey and that spiritual journey for Uncle. He'll go up and meet up with our ancestors in that beautiful space.
And with his ancestors,
he'll be up there dancing in the duster, you know, having a bit of fun, having a yarn and carrying on like he always did, you know. It was just a beautiful song. But thank you, everybody. And thank you for a wonderful night. And hopefully we will see you in other webinars and seminars and all that sort of stuff, because we just love yarning. All right.
Never shut up.
No.
Yeah, that's it. All right. Good
These will
night,
be like
everybody.
that.
Awesome people. Thank you, awesome
Thank
people.
you.
Be
Give
safe,
yourselves a
everyone.
Thank you.
clap.
so good to be with you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone.